Good morning, everyone. Today is also the Indian Festival of Lights, so happy Diwali. We have a distinguished panel of keynote speakers to kick off the summit and the summit's talks and discussions. Let me start off by introducing our first speaker, Dr. Charles Tahan. Dr. Tahan directs the National Quantum Coordination Office within the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And in that role, his responsibilities include coordination of the National Quantum Initiative, as well as quantum information science and technology activities throughout the nation and across the federal government, industry, and academia. Dr. Tahan is on detail from the Laboratory of Physical Sciences, where he was the technical director, and he continues to serve as its chief scientist as well. His recognitions include the Researcher of the Year Award and the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. Dr. Tahan will join us virtually.
Thank you, Supratik and David. That was a nice introduction. And before I just give you an update on what's going on here at the White House and the National Quantum Initiative, let me congratulate you. I think you've created something really unique in the Chicago Quantum Exchange and all the ecosystem around Illinois and even broader across the Midwest. In fact, I was talking to my counterpart in France a week ago. They've just launched their big quantum strategy, and he mentioned wanting to partner with the Chicago Quantum Exchange, and I've heard that from a number of international partners. So it really speaks to the international nature of what the world-known nature of what you've created. So best of luck and congratulations on that. So what I want to do today is just give you an update on where we are in the NQI. I'm Charlie Tahan. I work here in the White House. My background is quantum computing. I've taken a varied role, from academia to DARPA to program manager, and then here. And as some of the early speakers said this morning, I think it's very clear now that quantum information science is a foundational change in information science and technology, right? So that has to have dramatic impacts on our economy and national security and future prosperity. We know some of those, and we still have a lot to learn, right, about how those impacts will manifest themselves over the next 10 or 20 years. It's already been 3 years since we, as the government, this is the interagency, all the agencies who fund or care about quantum, and there are like 15 now, wrote a strategy for the nation. So 3 years later, there's now a National Quantum Initiative Act, several bodies like the National Quantum Coordination Office here, and OSTP, which I run, 2 subcommittees on quantum in the White House, an advisory committee, and so on. All this infrastructure, in addition to defense authorization language, to create a big new initiative to push quantum forward. And the 6 pillars of our strategy are still the same, science, infrastructure, workforce, industry, security, balancing the security aspects, and in international cooperation. And we've been making progress. We've very much moved into a phase of getting things going to executing. And you can see that with the 10 centers that David mentioned earlier, plus 3 more DoD IC centers that are all up and running now, and increases to all the core programs, really a doubling of the budget within 2 years across the U.S. quantum information science funding agencies. And today I'm really excited to announce that we've made a lot of progress on our international progress. We've just signed a international quantum cooperation agreement with the UK. Personally, I did my postdoc in England. We have a long history in quantum and other areas. So I'm excited about getting our international strategy going in this new administration, trying to create this global market, for quantum. So here in the White House and really across the government, we realize very much that quantum is a ecosystem. and not only in the government, which has many different agencies. We have the U.S. We have a very federated or federal funding environment. Each agency has their own mission, and they execute that. But they coordinate also through various bodies like the Office of Science and Technology Policy. But that's not all, right? There's also academia, the nonprofits, and there's industry. And it really is vital that we all work together to make progress, especially in quantum. And when we say make progress, and when we say things like science first, what we really mean is not just science, but we mean tackling the hardest problems first. So if your mission is to deploy the best quantum clock for the next generation of GPS, or to pursue, search for gravity waves if you're NSF, your grand challenge may be different. If you're an industry or a company, you're trying to find economic value, some value that other people will buy, to make your company get bigger. Those are the grand challenges. And within each of those grand challenges are hard technical problems. I've been working in this field for 20 years. There are many people, I'm sure in the audience, the same. These are hard problems we need to solve. This has been a lot of amazing progress, but still a long way to go. And so when we say science first, we mean for your mission, pick the hardest problems that you need to solve. It might be, we need better fidelity for a qubit. It might be, we need to know why we would build a quantum network. What is the application that would really drive economic value? And try to tackle that first. And how can the agencies or the ecosystems we're creating help you do that? So that's what we mean by science first. And we try to capture that through input from the community in our Quantum Frontiers report, which came out about a year ago. And that lists, the 8 sort of the collated technical challenges that we should probably be focusing on as a nation first. So take a look at that. And I'll just give you a few examples. One of the first technical areas we tackled as an interagency in our strategy in science was quantum networking. In many ways, networking is one of the most immature of the three, probably the most immature quantum technologies of computing, sensing, and networking. Because we're still trying to understand why you would build a big network. There's early applications and potential for secure communications. In the long term, we'd probably like to interconnect quantum computers, quantum sensors, but we don't know a lot about how big a network you need. How good does it have to be? So there's real motivation to build the right size test beds in networks to answer those questions. And we know for sure, for example, that building the components, the transducers, the repeaters, those will be valuable for a lot of different technologies. So we definitely do that. So the first report out of the science working group in our subcommittee was on quantum networking, and it lists those things as objectives. And we hope that will spur Congress and agencies to fund those as the hard things to make progress in networking. Similar with sensing. Sensing is rightly so considered the most to have the most potential for near-term application. We already have applications of quantum technology that are fielded. And the issue here is not so much that we don't have ideas, it's that we need to go from the lab to market. And if you just look at GPS or quantum clocks as an example, that took, if you look back, it took decades, hundreds of millions of dollars, and multiple agencies picking up the ball from one program to another to make that happen. So each of these technologies are going to have similar, hopefully not as big, but similar roadblocks to success. So we're trying to justify what will be needed to get that next 10 times of investment to go from lab to market. Moving on to infrastructure, so we have quite a few national labs now, which have quantum information science research centers, both from DOE and NSF and across the DoD. We had a meeting just a month ago between the directors of all these labs and the subcommittee co-chairs and us here in the NQCO, just to talk about how can we collaborate better, both intra-center and internationally. But this is a great first start at getting the whole nation behind this effort. One of the key motivators of the NQI was not just to put more funding and create new graduate students. It was to find the talent across the country, and get as much talent as we can into this new and exciting field, because we do need not only new people, but new ideas. So there's a lot of progress there. And that gets into workforce development, which is really, very close second to science. If you look on which we watch closely, the ads for quantum people, and we're above 1,000 now. If you believe some of the numbers, this has really been a dramatic increase in the need for talent. As anybody who's looked for a postdoc recently knows, it's a very competitive environment, which is an amazing thing, and very different from when I graduated in 2005, where government was really the best, and maybe the only option for people who wanted to go into sort of an industry-like atmosphere. So it's amazing progress we've had, but we have real challenges. We have a near-term shortage. We have a long-term issue where we really need to diversify and expand the width of the pipeline of talent, to get into all the places across the country who can be, really there, to give them the opportunities to participate in this new field, because we're desperate for those different points of views. And that's a bigger STEM issue across the country. One, it's that this administration takes very seriously, and we're looking to partner with some of the other STEM activities that are going on right now. But within the White House, we have a workforce working group. It's responsible for helping kick off the National Q12 Education Partnership, Q12education.org, and other things. Just last night, I was working on the executive summary for our workforce strategy. And to me, it really comes down to careers. There have to be great careers, and people need to understand and realize, every parent out there need to realize that there are great careers in quantum and quantum adjacent fields. If you come out with a degree in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, knowing how to make chips or design RF circuits, you are valuable. You will do well in this environment, whether it's for quantum, hopefully, or AI or autonomy, robotics, microelectronics. These are the fields of the future in this country. And if I was a parent, I'd be telling my kids to do that. And that's what we need to use the White House to do, is bring that message out across the country. And then comes educating people at all different curriculum levels in quantum, inspiring them, and then giving them unique experiences. And this is something that, it's all well and good to make online courses. It's great to make modules that go into high schools. But the most impactful thing you can do as a scientist or engineer is go out to a school with that module with them and show the kids, show people a real human being who has done this, a real flawed person like myself, or yourself, who's not perfect, who's not some Einstein, mythical being who has gone through your career and been successful. Showing people real humanity is those kind of experiences, I really believe, are what keep people going through the scientific or engineering endeavor. So if I had any ask of you, it would be to that: get out there and introduce yourself to people. Okay, so we've talked about workforce science, infrastructure. One of the things I have to stress about quantum is that we're not talking about a telescope here. We're not talking about a particle accelerator. Quantum computers, quantum sensors, they have real economic potential, and they have real national security implications. One of the original drivers for building a quantum computer was Schwarz's factoring algorithm, which puts our public key cryptography and secure communications system at risk. So we need to think about those implications. We need to move the nation to post-quantum cryptography, both our national security systems. This is the secure communications that the president uses, for example, but also the critical infrastructure, and eventually, the internet communications architecture. When you go out to buy something, those will have to move to post-quantum or quantum-resistant cryptography. And we need to continue to think about how this technology could be used, for nefarious purposes. So we need to protect it. We need to balance moving fast as we can with protecting it. And that's what we do in the ethics or economic and security implications of quantum science subcommittees. We try to balance those and understand where this field is going, where we are, and how we need to think about it in the future. And there's a perfect example. Our most recent report out of the ethics subcommittee is called "The Role of International and QIS," and this was really spurred on by questions a year and a half ago about restricting international talent from coming into the U.S. There was a discussion. There was even a presidential proclamation restricting certain schools who have military ties from coming into the U.S. Also, COVID hit, and that had a huge effect on the number of people immigrating to do science in this country. And anecdotally, we all know that the U.S. depends on foreign talent. My dad was an immigrant. We're all sons and daughters of immigrants at some level in the U.S., and we rely on that international collaboration and influx of talent. And quantum has always been a global field. The UK statement is a great example. Some of the original ideas for quantum algorithms, were conceived in the UK. So it's very important that we continue to cooperate internationally. And what this report does is try to quantify how many foreign students are studying here in the quantum. Why is that important to our future? Why do we want them to stay? It's kind of a clear direction of it's important. We need to continue to attract talent. We need to continue to share people internationally. I gained a lot by doing postdocs in Australia and the UK and Japan, and I brought that back with me. So feel free to check out this report. So that gets to international collaboration, which is our last or second to last policy area. Quantum is a global field. We need to continue to cooperate internationally. It started back in 2019 with the first joint quantum statement with Japan. It's a very high level statement of shared values. What we consider scientific integrity that needs to be respected. We want to preserve what we have in science right now. We want to continue to cooperate to grow the marketplace. Let's create a secure supply chain so we can collaborate with other countries and depend on them, other countries, companies, depend on them for technology, like dilution refrigerators, like lasers, and so on. We want a place where we want an environment where we can share, and we want to share talent. We want to find ways to increase the skills in these critical areas all across the world, especially with our like-minded, democratic partners. And just announced today, these are pictures from Dr. Eric Lander, the OSTP director and science advisor to the president, signing our US-UK joint quantum statement. We had representatives from the UK. It's actually, I have a call right after this with the science minister of the UK to talk about the next steps. So really excited to finally get that done. We've gone through COVID, Brexit, new administration, gas shortages. It's been a long journey this year. As many of you know, a lot of challenges to making international communications and visits go. But we finally got this signed and really excited about the future of creating this global network of countries who think the same way and want to move this field faster together. So looking forward, getting the science right, understanding the applications that will benefit our society, expanding the marketplace of ideas and talent. These are the critical things to making this field work. And, we just had a couple of weeks ago, a month ago now, the first in-person event at OSTP, with the first across the whole administration, really in the last 2 years. And it was for quantum, and it was a summit on quantum industry and society. I really wanted to bring, as many companies as I could to meet with Dr. Lander, the other senior White House representatives from administration and OSTP and the National Security Council, and have a discussion about 3 topics. How do we get the science right? What are the applications that will benefit society? how do we enhance American competitiveness, working with our global partners to accelerate this technology development for useful applications. What are those roadblocks and how do we get there while we protect it, from being stolen? And then how do we enable our people? How do we ensure that this new field, if we believe it's going to be as successful as we want to believe, we need to ensure that it benefits a broad spectrum of America and Americans. They have opportunities and they realize that they can participate too. And these three topics really derive from President Biden's questions to Dr. Lander, about the future of science and technology in this country. So if you haven't read that letter, it's a great read. And there's a readout of this event as well on quantum.gov. And so what did we learn? As many of you know, the application space for quantum computing in particular, which is getting dominant amount of money in the industry space, are still nascent. We still have a lot of questions. We know in the long term, we're strongly suspect that quantum computers will be relevant for chemistry and material science. In the near term, we're still trying to understand, and it's important to push through this next 5 to 10 years and understand what are the applications that are going to really matter and justify the next level of investment and interest from senior policymakers, senior investors, and so on. And then on the flip side, as we try to push through these roadblocks, if we need new infrastructure, if we need new funding to use these systems, to bring the application developers in, to the domain experts, we need to understand how we can protect it as the technology evolves, because at some point the technology will evolve so much that it could be a threat to our encryption. So how do we protect this? How do we just do common sense things to ensure that it's not used for bad purposes? And then all of this is in context, and I'm wrapping up now, of potentially really transformative legislation in Congress. You've probably all heard about the CHIPS Act, which is looking to spend $50 billion for onshore manufacturing, and not just 3 nanometer and future fabrication facilities, but also advanced packaging, advanced R&D, design, all the parts of the ecosystem to make the next generation of microelectronics. So you have to ask yourself, well, how does quantum as an emerging technology fit into that? How do we ensure that we have the right access to those new amazing capabilities if they're invested in the US? We want to be able to put superconductors in there. We want to do exotic things. We want to have fast turnaround times. So that's something we're working on with the microelectronics subcommittee and other members of the executive office of the president to ensure NSF, there's two bills in Congress, the USICA and another one in the House that propose to create a new technology directorate within NSF that would look to bringing technology to market. Also ARPA-H, DARPA for health and the NIH is very likely to happen. How can we get, for example, biological sensors, quantum sensors for biology into ARPA-H or into NIH and help go over that hump of bringing stuff from the lab or ideas to eventually to the field. And I'll just end with quantum computing as an example of, this future technology, right? It's a great example for microelectronics because the future of microelectronics is different. It's heterogeneous. It's not going to be all silicon CMOS. It's going to be a lot of different technologies. And quantum is a great example because it's a whole bunch of very different exotic technologies. I mean, everybody here knows, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, depends how many, what you want to count and what time frame you're in of potential technologies for quantum information simulators or processes or sensors. And we really need to consider a broad view as we make these investments of different types of materials we might need, different types of ways of controlling them, and so on. Just as an example, you want an ability to characterize materials with extremely high precision for quantum devices. And you'd love to have access to that, to the broadest range of people as possible. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to people. Back to the skill sets and the talent, growers, materials scientists, fab process engineers, circuit designers, RF microwave engineering, characterization test. We need those people, software engineers. we need those skill sets. I mean, that's going to be relevant not just to quantum, but to microelectronics, AI, autonomy, everything I said before. We need to work as a nation to ensure we have enough talent to create this new industry. So that's the end. That's all I really wanted to say. Happy to take any questions, but that's what we're working on. Some of the things we're working on at the White House.
Thank you, Charles. We have time for a few questions, but just wait for someone to get you the mic and raise your hand if you have questions.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I'm Russ Renzis with Oxford Instruments, which is a British company, as you know. How does the US-UK agreement actually change how we can engage with some of these key US institutions, such as QEDC and the National Quantum Initiative Centers?
Great question. It changes it in a few ways. It helps. It helps on the US side, it helps agencies justify more, for example, joint agency agreements with UK counterparts. So for example, if NSF wants to work with a British funding agency to jointly fund the program, this makes it a bit easier to do that. They could do it before, this makes it easier to prioritize. Second, the agreement will help enable the Quantum Economic Development Consortium to now start admitting UK companies into the QEDC. So that's one of our driving forces to get this done, is now we can start to expand the Quantum Industry Consortium or partner with other consortiums in other countries. And this facilitates a country-to-country relationship to help facilitate that. It also, creates a regular venues for us to share and talk about the trajectory of these technologies and discuss how we're investing in it. Quantum is a very big space. As everybody knows, no one company or even country can invest in every type of quantum technology. So there's real benefit if sort of sharing the load of investigating this parameter space. If one country is really good in this area, let them do it, and let's just partner to understand its future potential. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
There were some other questions out there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carol Scarlett with Axion Technologies, and I noted that you had mentioned that there was a need to diversify, and I think this has been talked about a number of times. Can you speak to whether or not there are going to be programs, interagency programs, and grants that are specifically targeted toward ensuring that all Americans have access and opportunity in the coming era of quantum?
Yeah, so I mean, there already are programs within NSF, DoD, trying to work out, to create new opportunities for creating educational material. For example, the Q2Work program out of NSF, which is behind the Quantum Q12 Education Partnership. Also, LPS, where I'm from, just launched the LPS Cubic Laboratory, which is funding the development of potentially research labs and accelerated learning material for quantum, not only for young people, but also for people who want to retrain and get a master's degree. And if you're an ASIC designer and want to retrain. So there's a lot of things going on. NSF is thinking about this in a big way. We'll see how the legislation plays out, and also, it's all governed by internal budgets of the agencies, but there certainly are programs now, and there will be, more in the future. Yeah.
Question there.
Rafael Sami from Arrow Electronics. I really appreciate, Dr. Tahan, what you mentioned, the challenges that we're facing currently. I mean, quantum technology is important in the next 5, 10, 20 years, but there is huge shortage of RF engineering, on fab capacity, and you're hearing then what's going on in the supply chain where people get access, we have to wait a year to get access to semiconductor. What's your view on what needs to be done now to address those issues, helping the quantum technology moving forward?
Yeah, well, let me start out with something I think is nuts. Go to universities and look for antenna engineers. You can't, it's extremely hard to find an antenna program anymore in the US. I think there's a tendency to want to jump on the big bandwagons, AI, quantum, autonomy. But like if you look at RF engineering, it underpins a lot of these other technologies. You know, we need more RF engineers, and that means core programs and antenna engineering, you know, RF design. So the first thing I would say is sort of a call to action from the universities that you need to go back to the drawing board in some sense and say, what are the core technologies underscoring the industries of the future, quantum, AI, autonomy, microelectronics, and where are my programs? Where are my classes, you know, that are generating those skill sets? Because those are the people, as we know, who have real value when you're trying to hire. So that's one part. The second part is there's a lot of work going on in microelectronics. You know, I think in some sense there's a near-term problem with the pandemic. I mean, dramatic changes over the last 2 years. But there's a lot of motivation now to address just the need for a microelectronics infrastructure here, and that also includes, for example, CHIPS passes a National Semiconductor Technology Center, which would, you know, put a lot of investment not only in capability like new fabs and such, but also in training of these skill sets. So I mean, that's what's going on now within the administration to make a difference.
Do we have any questions from our virtual audiences? Okay, there's a question here.
All right, question for our virtual audience. How do you balance the desire to move the technology forward rapidly with the concerns of preserving national security?
Yeah, I mean, that's the that's the question, you know. So that's one of the motivations we had to have somewhat of a discussion with industry, you know. And I think the answer is to be smart. You know, how do you build in? How do you increase the cybersecurity of your companies? You know, NIST has guidelines for doing that. Follow those guidelines. You know, so at a minimum level, increase the cybersecurity of small companies. Does the government need to help? You know, that's one solution. Another is, well, what is the research around security? So going down the road, you know, if you have a quantum computer in the cloud, is there a way you can tell if somebody's trying to run, you know, hacking on it? You know, it's similar problems to what people face now with their supercomputers in the cloud, but quantum makes it extra challenging. So what kind of research solutions can people come up with? Also, how do you build in trust into the devices themselves, for example? Another answer might be having onshore fabrication facilities. You know, so all these things come together, and what you want to try to do is create an umbrella of increasing the security without, you know, slowing down industry. And those things are often at odds, but I think the answer is try to be as smart as you can and, you know, get the right type of controls and guidelines without making undue burden on what frankly is in many areas pre-competitive, you know, speculative research. you know, trying to balance that is really hard, but that's why we have everybody get together and talk it through.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you for a really engaging talk and insightful responses to all the questions. Thanks again.